I think energy is pretty amazing. It helps power a ton of super useful items like iPads, computers, toasters, I don't know, a lot of things. Globally, we use about 170 terawatt hours of energy every year. Uh, the frick is a terawatt hour? So basically, a terawatt hour is outputting 1 trillion watts for an hour. And it takes around 1,000 watts to toast bread, so you could toast at least 170 trillion pieces of bread per year. Um, at least. It only takes around 2 minutes to toast bread, so that number is a lot higher. It's a lot of bread energy. Energy is it's amazing, but there's kind of a problem with it. Energy production has been really bad for the environment. It accounts for about 73% of CO2 emissions, fossil fuels being a large portion of that. A simple solution to this is just get rid of burning things like coal and fossil fuels. The new problem is that a large part of our energy production comes from these sources, so we need to find something to help replace coal and fossil fuels while not being super destructive to the environment. And that's where renewable nuclear energy comes in. So, solar and wind and all the other renewable sources are the cleanest way to get energy. But coal and fossil fuels make up so much of the energy production that if we try and only replace it with renewable sources, we just won't be able to catch up very quickly. So, we need something else to be able to help pick up the pace. And that's where nuclear energy comes in. So, nuclear energy production could really help with getting rid of coal and fossil fuels. It has the potential to make up for the energy loss along with more renewables, but people are scared of making more nuclear plants. Nuclear power plants are being shut down instead of being built up. This is mainly because of concerns of the safety of nuclear power plants. This video is to try and address and elaborate on some of those concerns, mainly reactor meltdowns and nuclear waste storage. Okay, first, reactor meltdowns. So, there have been 667 nuclear reactors, and there have been 3 large scale meltdowns. So, that means about 0.4% of reactors have had large scale meltdowns. I'm not saying those events were bad, but that number is very low. Today, there are only 400 active reactors because of the fear that has come from those 3 events. The 3 meltdowns were 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and Fukushima, and we will address all 3 of them. So, first was the 3 Mile Island accident. The partial meltdown of the reactor allowed radioactive gases into the environment. This sounds bad until you find that there was an epidemiology study done that found no increase in cancer rates in the area. Even this small event sent a large scare and made the safety regulations for reactors higher. The next meltdown that happened was Chernobyl, and it is the only deadly meltdown. This one was really bad. So it was a result of flawed reactor design and inadequately trained personnel. There's a steam explosion that killed 2 workers and released 5% of the radioactive reactor core into the environment. 28 more workers died within a few weeks due to acute radiation syndrome. 5,000 thyroid cancers were attributed to the radiation, but besides that, there was no other evidence of major health impacts 20 years after the incident. 3,500 people were also evacuated from the area because of the accident. This accident was terrible and actually leads to concern. We learned a lot from the accident, though. We have since developed new failsafes that trigger faster and have improved the design of reactors. It was a terrible event, but according to a German nuclear safety report, a repetition of the event is now virtually impossible. Safety procedures have been put in place to make sure this doesn't happen again. Then in March 2011, the Fukushima accident happened. This one really wasn't as extreme. It mainly came down to a tsunami that disabled the reactors. There was radiation released, but there have been no deaths or cases of radiation sickness. This one really didn't affect the environment all that much. Those were the 3 main events that lead to all of the fear that surrounds nuclear energy, and out of the 3, only Chernobyl killed anyone. This graph shows how many people die per unit of energy for all the ways we generate energy. As you can see, nuclear is at the very bottom. This comes down to nuclear only having Chernobyl to blame for deaths, while coal and fossil fuels have much more frequent events and kill more consistently. Nuclear is much better than the main ways we generate energy, so we need to stop shutting down reactors and start making more. The other main concern of nuclear reactors is the radioactive waste and where we can store it. Nuclear waste isn't a very big problem, but there are concerns that radiation will leak into the environment. This won't happen because of the multi-stage way nuclear waste is stored, or more accurately, processed. So, there are two main wastes: low-level radiation and high-level radiation. Low-level radiation is basically just packed up and disposed of. It doesn't have a large amount of radiation and is thus not very difficult to dispose of. High-level radiation is a bit more complicated. The first step is to let it decay and get rid of some heat and radiation, sometimes by putting it in water. Then it is packaged and stored deep underground. There is also intermediate level radioactive waste, but it is just stored deep underground without the decaying step, so it's basically like high level without an extra step. Neither of those methods have any meaningful percentage of risk to them. There's basically no chance that nuclear waste will leak into the environment. It doesn't have a ton of radiation to begin with, and then it is stored way deep in the earth, so it couldn't even reach anything if the storage broke. Nuclear is really super clean technology. We have negated most of the risks that came with it in the beginning. It has the fewest deaths per unit of energy, and that's why I think we need to start making more reactors rather than shutting them down. More reactors will lead to more risks, but compared to what we are using, it is still way less deadly than coal or fossil fuels. It also doesn't affect the environment as much. This video was mainly for educational purposes, trying to convince people to not be so hesitant and scared towards nuclear. I just scratched the surface. This is a more complicated issue than this. I tried to cover my points as best as I could. I'm just a high school student doing what little research and what little way I can try and help with climate change. So if you don't trust or you want to double check what I said, I have all of my sources in the description. Nuclear energy isn't as dangerous as people are saying it is. And yeah, that's it. Okay. Spread this video like the plague. I'm looking at you, Kyle.